Let's talk about late earnings season. So there's usually a period in earnings season where there's a ton of stocks reporting in the morning, in the afternoon, and then everyone thinks earnings season is over when that big push completes. But there are still S&P 500 stocks reporting earnings this week into Friday, March 20th, and I want to take a look at those. So you're going to recognize these names across sectors and industries. I'm going to look at price action, market timing, and momentum because I'm HEMA ready, and that's what I do. So let's dive in, starting with MU, Micron. So even though everything's going on out in Iran and affecting oil and everything else, the AI story is still at large. So the whole semiconductor space is still something to pay attention to. So here's Micron on a weekly chart. And what you can see here right out of the gate is how beautifully with the long-term uptrend, the RSI Power Zones have helped you stay long and not try to pick the top until it was truly time for that market to pause. So the RSI Power Zones are my favorite momentum indicator. I explain them in the Winning RSI Playbook, go deeper in the Bull Bear RSI Face-Off ebook, and share the full enchilada in the 4 Zones RSI coverage system. Now let's go to the daily chart. Here you can see that after consolidating for a few weeks, there is now the attempt to break out higher. Now, Micron is reporting this week on March 18th after the close. So we may want to look for a return, a slight return on a pullback before adding to positions here. But I do think the overall bullish structure is intact while Micron stays above the March 9th low. Next up is FedEx. So looking at this chart, you can see how on a daily chart, this had traded up into late February and is pulling back. And it is, again, doing something beautiful. It's pulling back from the bull resistance power zone into the bull support power zone. Now, this correction lower is not over, so I wouldn't necessarily want to stick my hand out and buy, but I would keep tabs on a couple boundaries that might be helpful. So if shares of FedEx start getting back above this high from March 10th, that would be a good sign that the uptrend might be resuming. And if that happens, then I would obviously want to see a return to the most recent high, but then push higher from there. If the current correction lower continues, then if it gets below the low from the day prior, March 9th, I would watch out for a deeper pullback, potentially back towards this old top from January 9th. So again, all this may be fueled by the earnings release, which is taking place here on Thursday, March 19th, and we'll stay tuned. All right, next up is LULU, ticker LULU, Lululemon. Now, this is a chart that you can see has had some suppression to the downside. If we go back higher to the weekly time frame, we can see that's in the context of a larger move lower from January of 2025. So this stock is not looking hot. It's not a buy candidate anytime soon. And what I want to point out here is how recently it peaked, formed this high on February 19th with the RSI power zone staying below the bear resistance power zone. So when a market is more weak, it can't even have the RSI move back towards the bear resistance power zone sometimes. That's the sign of a market that's actually pretty weak. So what you might want to do here is keep an eye out for a base to form over some time. I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon, but this is a pretty beaten up stock. Some folks really like to keep an eye on those. At the minimum, I'd want to see it get above the February 20th high before thinking about building up a position in it. All right, here we have Accenture, ticker ACN. So if we look at this stock on the weekly chart, we can also see, like Lulu, it's beat up. Look how low it's gone, not just in price, but on the RSI power zones. When you bring that up to the daily time frame, you can see it's attempting to stabilize, but it hasn't quite cleared its path. So there actually is a zone of resistance here between two levels, the March 6th high and the February 20th high, that I think are shaping the action, and they're very few pennies apart. So if we can get above that March 6th high, that's a good sign for further recovery, potentially towards the 260 area on ACN. But if that stays intact, I'd watch out below for another round of weakness. And again, beaten up stocks are not fun to observe, but eventually they sometimes stabilize and create really great opportunities to enter long for a swing trade or position trade. All right, last but not least is DRI, Darden Restaurants. Now here we have something really cool going on. The action off of the low from March 9th coincided with the RSI power zones starting to form a pattern where you can actually use price and momentum to calculate an upside target, which is pretty cool. Now, I teach exactly how to do that in my 4 Zones RSI coverage system but I'm going to give you the result of that here for you to monitor, okay? Don't trade this outright unless you know how to do the technique yourself, but I'm just showing you the possibilities. All right, so the momentum-based target that shares of DRI are likely to trade to, again, you got to keep tabs on the earnings release, which is scheduled for March 19th, is 220.01. Now, this may look like I'm just marking off the old tops, but this is calculated based on price and momentum. It's not a past traded price level. It's really close, though, to the February 18th high, which is significant. So there's an opportunity for shares to climb into that level and then potentially continue higher from there. Let's go to a weekly chart to see where we are. Yes, the next target above that would be the June 2025 high. So that's my look at a few stocks that are reporting earnings this week that are S&P 500 stocks at the tail end, if you will, of earnings season. And again, a reminder that the RSI Power Zones, my favorite momentum indicator down below, works in all kinds of conditions and timeframes. So if you found value in the analysis, in the stock picks, or both, go ahead and hit that like button. And if you want to bring your ticker to me to analyze in this fashion, I actually do that on Tuesdays at my Ticker Request Live show. So check the links below for when the next show is happening. We have one today on March 17th, St. Patrick's Day of 2026, and we will continue on from there. So look forward to seeing you at Ticker Request Live and our next video.